All right, so this is Ammon Brimhall. So we know each other from our work with Fortune Builders, which is a national real estate education company. We both have coached for that company for a little while. I've been doing that for maybe 6-7 years. Ammon's been doing it for longer than me, but that's how we know each other. And he's been investing in real estate for over 20 years now in a lot of different types of transactions. So he's going to talk to us about what he sees going on in the real estate market. You know, I talk to investors all the time. And just try to, just understand, what do people perceive in terms of the real estate market and what's going on. I hear a lot of different answers. Some people think prices are just going to keep going up. Some people think we're headed for a crash. Some people are just kind of in between, So I hear lots of different opinions on what's going on right now. So Ammon is going to give some of his insight on the market and just some of his takeaways and some of his ideas in terms of what he does as an investor. So Ammon, let's go ahead and just hear just kind of your overview of what you see going on right now, things with inflation, other things going on, and how do you think it impacts investors?
You bet. Well, first of all, I have to tell you, I'm raising teenagers. My first one just turned 20, so I've kind of gotten one through the teenager realm. So whenever they hear that somebody else is listening to me, they just giggle. Somebody's listening to Dad. What? So I appreciate having a captive audience that isn't always trying to, tell me what I don't know. But I know I have good kids. But the other thing too is, thanks, Eddie. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to be hanging out with you guys. I heard somebody back there talking about the market, what investors wanted, and so I think if Eddie's told me right, pretty much everybody here has a lot of investing experience. Is that right?
Yeah, for the most part.
Okay.
There might be one or two newbies. We won't point them out, so it's all good. But
That's
most of them have been doing it for a while.
So you can let me know where I go wrong. So I'll look forward to learning. I have had good success over the time I've been in real estate. So I started in my early 20s and got in right as the market started going up. And I had a real estate agent tell me as I started to get into investing, I've never had a real estate license, but an agent told me, he said, Ammon, investing doesn't work. The market's too hot, right? This is 03, 04, 05. The market's really heating up, going crazy. He said, just get your real estate license. And so that's where I started. And then of course, 08, the big crash comes. And so I continued to invest through that period of time. And of course, now we've seen it go way back up again. And so it's interesting that the beginning of my career started with this big spike, started in this huge spike, watched the big drop, and now we're this big spike again. So it's kind of, history repeating itself. So it's interesting to hear people talk about, oh my gosh, there's this massive crash coming, and hear them talk about what's happening. And yet what's interesting, and one of the things I've always been good at, is been paying attention to what's happening and keeping the emotion out of it, which is probably the biggest challenge for all of us. When we go buy a project, our emotions, I don't know, maybe you are superhumans, but for me, I've been doing this a long time. When I go buy a project, there's still a part of me that says, oh my gosh, what if this goes poorly? And then as the unknown factors get bigger, my nervousness goes up, and I'm more likely to make bad decisions. Well, we're certainly in a period of a lot of unknown right now. There are a lot of things happening that are out of our control. There's things we cannot see. And so we're certainly back in that kind of a space. But just like back in 08, I think there are ways to understand it so that we can make good decisions and come out on the other side. So I will say this first. I warned Eddie I would say this, but I will say that I think as maybe a country and as a culture, I think we've gotten a little bit too far away from starting with the beginning, which is, do we have meaning in life? Because what I'm going to say is, doesn't matter what I think the market's going to do or what some other guru says. There's not one of us here who knows all the forces and of the market that's going to hit us. We just can't know it. It's impossible. And so no matter how well prepared we are, things can come at us. And so I always say, man, have good meaning. So if things go horribly and you lose everything, you still have a great somebody beside you, and you love your kids, and you love your brothers and sisters, and you got something beautiful to hang on to, because life goes crazy. You know what I mean? So Viktor Frankl wrote a good book, Man's Search for Meaning. And he went through some horrific experiences, but came out, a better man because of them. So that's what I would say is whenever you analyze things, just have a good life, have a meaningful life. Start with that one. And then the second one is then you move into trying to make good decisions, knowing that if something goes wrong, hey, you got what matters. All right. So as I look at it, and I feel pretty confident in this in terms of going forward, just like you guys, I'm willing to invest on this, but I think the first thing we have to look at is what are the strengths? What's holding the real estate market up? What's holding the prices where they're strong? And quite frankly, the major factor is low supply. There just isn't any out there, right? I can only see 4 of you, but I would assume, maybe give me nods of heads, and well, I just bought 3 units in Chattanooga, so I had a little bit of experience for your guys' market out there. But if your market's like mine and most of the others I coach in, there just isn't much out there to buy for retailers or investors or anybody. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
So there's low inventory, and I haven't looked up the reports, but just a few months ago, I was reading that we're some 4 to 7 million housing units behind in what we actually need. Right. So there is not any inventory. It just doesn't exist. That's not made up. It's not fake news. It's not, it's not partisan ideas. There just isn't enough housing out there. And so that's the first thing, that if somebody comes and tells me, well, oh my gosh, it's 2008 all over again, I say, no, it's not. In 2008, 1 of every 2 homes that was built was pure speculation, period. That's what it was built for. So when that market crashed, people could run out of one house and go buy the other house for half price. They could run out of one house and rent the next one for almost nothing. So there was so much extra inventory that when there was a little blip, well, it wasn't a little blip, but when there, issues happened, it fell apart because it was a hollow cave underneath. And so when that top just caved a little bit, the whole thing just a big crater. We don't have the same problem. There is not enough inventory. So if somebody loses their house to foreclosure, they're pretty much saying, well, where am I going to live? And if they don't have, because they're not going to find a cheaper place to rent, rents are through the roof because there's nothing to rent. So either have to have a good bridge that isn't taken, or a good family member, because there just isn't anywhere to go. So the reality of that fact doesn't change with costs. It doesn't change with interest rates. It doesn't change with inflation. There just isn't enough inventory. And so the way I look at it is there's this massive market factor here. It's not going away. It's got a lot of steam. It's got a lot of power. And it's not something like, I don't know, it's not something like, I love Toll House chocolate chip cookie dough ice cream, right? I don't know why I didn't find it earlier in my life, but like 3 months ago, it's Toll House chocolate chip cookie dough. It's amazing. Okay. If my budget got squeezed, I could live without it. Barely. My wife would have to help me, but I could make it. Right. But I can't live without a house. Right. I can't take my kids. I still have, 2 kids at home. One's leaving this summer, but 3 of my 5 are out. But I can't go live under a bridge with my 2 kids. I've got to have a house. And so that's that lack of supply is a huge factor. This next one, I'll be honest, I need to research this more, but I'm 95% sure I'm correct on this. And you guys can interrupt me and contradict me here if you disagree with me, but inflation is definitely going to keep housing prices high. Now, the reason for that, and I'll just give the example, Eddie just helped me purchase, Eddie and Grace both just helped me purchase 3 duplexes there in Chattanooga. And the fact of the matter is I bought them for $256 a unit, right? $256 a duplex. And it was interesting because out west here, what happens, and I'm sure you guys get it too, but here in Arizona, I'm from Arizona. What happens is all the Californians come in here. They sell their house in California. They come buy all their houses here for cash. And we're always complaining, all those people from California, they're ruining our market. They're pushing the prices up. And we whine about it all day long. We never shut up about it. So what did I do? I sold a duplex in Utah where the price was really high. And I went to Chattanooga. So I turned the hypocrite, and I took my cash from that unit and went to your nice, less expensive market and bought up some properties. So I told my wife, I says, I'm a Californian today. And I haven't told my friends yet, they'd disown me. But anyway, the whole point is this. There were several people in Chattanooga, as I got to know them, that thought I was a little bit crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, you're buying those for 256. I mean, just a year ago, they would have been 180. And they were kind of nervous for me. In fact, the lender a little bit was kind of like, you're paying what, right? Now they appraised and whatnot, but he was a little surprised by it. But here's the thing, and one of the reasons I wasn't too worried about it, there are 2 reasons, but one of them was just the sheer fact that the cost to build the thing would have been $369,000, right? So that's what my insurance guy went out and quoted it and talked to some builders and whatnot. So I'm still buying it for $110,000 less than what it would cost me to build it. So that's definitely helping keep the price up. Now, if inflation continues, that means 2 things are going up, right? Labor is getting more expensive because inflation does affect labor at some point, maybe lags a little bit, but materials are getting more expensive. So wood's getting more expensive, metal's getting more expensive, screws are getting more expensive. So a year from now, instead of being 369 to build those buildings, it's going to be 420 or 450. And so even though inflation hurts us in a lot of other ways, that's why real estate is one of the things that protects against inflation, because the inputs that it takes to build a unit go up with inflation, and so it helps bolster that price. And so that's another thing that's going to help prices there. Another thing, I mean, so those are the two big things I think that are holding up actual values of real estate. I think those are our two big massive forces. There are other forces, like locally, Tennessee, you guys are growing, you have huge population growth. So that's another thing that will continue to strengthen, values there. Arizona has huge population growth. Wisconsin, Minnesota, they don't have huge population growth. New York, parts of New York don't have huge population growth. So, but that's, the population growth isn't necessarily anything related to the last couple of years. The population growth has really been a trend over the last decade or so for most cases. Maybe the caveat to that would be kind of the political unrest, and the COVID unrest has it's making some people move to some states and other people move to other states. COVID's making people go more rural. So there have been some localized population changes there. So, here in Arizona, interest rates just went up 2 points here in the last few weeks, but we are getting so much population just for affordability from California, from, kind of being sick of other governments in other states, coming to some place they prefer to be. That's also propping it up, that had come in. But so in terms of prices of real estate, if you go to rentals, and what's going to prop that up is we have interest rates that are going up. And interest rates, of course, are the downward pressure on the value of real estate, right? The higher the interest rate is, the more expensive the mortgages are. Therefore, it brings prices down to make it more affordable. However, if you take interest rates up, it means that the cost of a mortgage goes up. So if you have a family saying, well, we could, a few weeks ago, they could buy the thing and pay a mortgage of, $1,500 a month, or they could rent it for $2,200 a month. They're like, oh, it's a no-brainer. We should definitely buy, even though prices are at historic highs. Let's definitely buy because our cash flow is so much better. Well, as interest rates go up, that could become inverse. It's not there yet, I don't think, in most parts of the country. It could be turned on its head, where your rent is at $2,200, but your mortgage is $2,400. Again, that would mean people are going to say, well, even though I'm not building equity and things like that, I at least save on monthly cash flow. So that's something that could be a problem. But what it does for renters is awesome, meaning we already have low supply for rental because there isn't enough housing, plus a lot of housing is going to Airbnb. So now if a bunch of renters are saying, well, I'm not going to buy because I can't afford the mortgage, it's cheaper to rent, the rising interest rates will actually help the rental market. It'll likely be a positive thing for those of us who own rentals. So anyway, let me just stop for a second. Those are the kind of the things that I see that are pushing prices up, that are keeping prices strong. Any questions, any comments, any corrections that you guys have on that one? And then we'll talk about the weaknesses and then strategies.
Any thoughts, guys? Any questions regarding that?
It makes sense. It's good stuff.
Yeah,
I
it makes
agree.
a lot of sense, I think. And I think the inventory issue is the real key there.
Yeah.
And, as interest goes up, it's only going to make rental better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the real problem is, affordable housing is terrible right now. There's a lot of renters that would love to buy, but what they can qualify for, it doesn't exist as a market right now.
And the
So-
builders can't build it to get it to that. price.
Exactly, and the builders can't build it because of the cost of construction, unless you built 200 square feet, and it's still 200 a square foot.
Yeah.
Exactly, so.
So it's a real challenge.
So what about that? Let's talk about that. So the interest rate being low kind of helps to offset the high prices, but now the interest rate starts ticking up. And at what point is it going to just cause some buyers to pull back? Which
They've
I think,
already pulled back.
well,
Yeah.
so I
For
was
the
gonna,
last 6 months, the affordable housing market, almost the last 9 to 10 months,
yeah,
they can't get it. If a house comes on the market that's under 250, I've got 13 to 15 offers to look at.
Mhm.
you know,
It's a big war.
it's a bidding war. And
For
there's
the rest
still,
of the country, there hasn't been an affordable market for the last 2 years, which is why I bought Chattanooga, because you guys still had somewhat of an affordable market. I mean, I could buy something out there that what I would call affordable, but the rest of the country, like everything north of you guys, everything west of you guys, and even if kind of you guys this little pocket of the South, you know, you still go to Alabama and find affordable things, and a couple, you know, Kansas and find some affordable things, but there ain't been nothing for 2 years. I mean, you're $400,000 or $500,000 in these other parts of the market, and so everything we've been building, same thing. Yeah, we haven't been servicing affordable housing at all, which is actually something to talk. You know, Grace, I interrupted you, so I apologize. But
no, that's good. No,
so let me turn it back to you, and then I can finish my thought.
no, I think I made the message clear about affordable housing, because that's a real problem for buyers. The inventory just doesn't exist. So they really have no choice to either rent or live with family members.
But do you not think that's gonna just continue? Because like builders are extra cautious now because of the last recession. So they're not gonna overbuild. And as interest rates go up, they're gonna start slowing down their building as well. Well, I think and this is just my opinions, but kind of going with him, you're just bringing our average up to a national average.
Well, here's
So
what
unless
I would,
wages go up, I don't know how those people are ever gonna afford to buy.
I don't
Because
think
our
building-
houses, I don't see
think building will
prices.
slow down. Building is gonna speed up.
yeah,
It has to. It's just gonna be an automatic thing.
but it's a
But
higher,
once interest rates
But
hit
it'll be a
10%,
higher
you
price
think they're
point.
still gonna be
It'll be a
building?
higher price point.
Yeah.
The building is not gonna stop. I can see it going for another 7 years strong.
Even as
Despite-
interest rates get
despite
into
the
double
interest rate-
digits, you think? so?
Despite the interest
Yeah.
rate, it's still gonna go.
it's just the affordable housing does not
That's the
exist.
part that you can't get to. And the only way we can get to that is the banks are gonna have to start giving builders loans. The municipalities are gonna start helping out on fees to start building. Impact fees have got to be reduced. Interest rate, interest payments, instead of making interest payments with the bank, they need to defer those to the very end till it's sold. Little things like that will help us get to affordability. Other than that. it's
Well,
just not
and
happening.
Charles his family has been building
I don't know if you can
affordable
see.
housing in Chattanooga for a
There we
long
go.
time.
That's
That was
helpful.
one of their
There's
major
Charles right there.
missions.
He's a builder.
And the reality is, they can't do it anymore. They can't build that $200,000 to $250,000 house. They can't do it. It doesn't exist because of land cost, because of construction costs,
Mhm.
and because of the basic cost to build in terms of financing, cost of
Code changes,
financing.
all of that, it's all.
Yeah, and so, interesting, like 10 years ago, Chattanooga had a lot of incentives for builders to go into markets like Highland Park at the time was, considered, and Orchard Knob and, just that whole area to build, and they gave them lots. They gave them credits of $15,000 to $20,000 to build affordable housing, and that doesn't exist anymore.
Well, without them stepping in, I just can't see. I mean, you're in this, you're a builder, I'm not, so I'm not arguing one side. But as interest rates go up, Americans live on a financial threshold. That's why you're already seeing our listings already up 300 to 350 units in just in the last few months. And if interest rates continue to climb, there's less and less buyers. So I don't understand how the supply, like who's gonna buy them? Because not everybody has cash. The rich Californians.
If I can for just a minute, I think I have a little bit of an answer to that. So it's about balancing the forces. I kind of talk about this big force of low supply. There's still low supply. I mean, you can take prices up, but there's still low supply. And so because you have demand up here and supply down here, what happens is as interest rates go up, demand comes down here, but supply is so low, you have a lot of space. And I don't know who was talking, but I think you're off screen. But it's true, as prices go up and interest rates go up, your demand starts to come down here. And at some point, it'll start to maybe cross a threshold. Well, you'll have more supply than you do demand. But supply is so low, you have a massive buffer zone here, right? And so part of the affordability was bad before interest rates went up, and interest rates going up only kills affordability. But here are a couple things that will happen is you have to segment your market. And if you segment it, you can make good plans and you can make good money. Because a lot of people just say, like, buyers in general. Okay, well, let's all be honest. We can segment buyers into 1,000 different segments, right? So we have old retiree buyers. We have younger buyers. You have me. My family's middle aged, right? So my kids are starting to move out. So, my housing needs change. We can talk about, West Coast versus East Coast buyers. We can talk about, there's just a lot of different things happening. And so different buyers have different needs. Fewer people are having kids. So, that changes housing requirements. So if you segment out your buyers, you can start predicting a little bit about what's going to be happening. Well, the affordable buyers, it's a real problem. And I'm surprised it hasn't already shown up in elections, because I've already heard and know of people, very responsible, hardworking people who are homeless, right? I read an article of this elderly couple, and what they did, they lived in Seattle, and they're like, we're not buying a house. They live full time on a cruise ship. It's cheaper, like by half, than owning a house in the Seattle area. Like literally, it's cheaper by half than living in Seattle.
Hey, I got my own yacht.
That's crazy. But so from the affordable perspective, we don't have an answer. So from the affordable perspective, there is nothing to buy. It's not there. So they have a problem. They either live with family, right? Or they start bunking up. I know people who now it's 2 families to a house, and they just kind of try and hope the zoning department doesn't find them. So we have a real affordability issue. Now, you would think, well, why doesn't the government just print money and give more handouts? Okay, well, that doesn't work. That's part of why we have the inflation we have today. We keep solving money by trying to print money. And there's all kinds of issues with that. But the reality is, from the affordable sector, again, the gentleman who was talking, who said, I don't know where the buyers are going to go. Well, the affordable's gone, at least for the rest of the country. Again, the South still has some things. And so part of what that segment does is they start to migrate. That's part of why I bought in Chattanooga, right? If other parts of Tennessee, which are much more expensive, people are like, well, gosh, what am I going to do? A business is going to come to Chattanooga because it's still a little bit more affordable. They'll start their business there, so their employees have a little more affordability, and it'll drive it down. Possibly you'll start seeing other states like Alabama getting more business, just because they'll say, how do we afford the real estate and have our workers afford the real estate? So you will see some of the affordability push business and populations to the South, where there's still somewhat of an amount of affordability, right? Until other market factors solve that. But you will see the affordability issue push people into those few pockets where it's still somewhat affordable. Where it's not affordable, homelessness will go up because the affordability isn't there. But as far as who we've been building for middle income and high income people, because they're the people who can afford it. So what's going to happen? Houses will start getting smaller. So instead of buying a 2,600 square foot house, you're going to buy a 1,900 square foot house, right? Like Charles said, they're not going to stop building. They'll just shift what they build. Tiny homes, they've tried them. People don't like them so much, but there are going to be more people saying, I don't like a tiny home. That's all I can afford. And so they'll move into the tiny home, right? Townhomes, condos, those are going to get bigger and more popular, right? They're going to keep building, but they're going to start building in ways that reduce the costs, so that those who are middle class and higher income can still keep buying. So those big, nice luxury homes, those big, nice, middle income homes, those are going to become less and less popular unless, again, labor or materials come down to adjust, right? Or wages, because of inflation, somehow just grow out of nowhere, right? We're looking more at a recession than wage growth, so that's probably not going to happen soon. But you're going to, like I say, you have to take your market and look at what buyers am I talking about, and then you can start making predictions as to how they're going to work. I'm doing manufactured homes. I've been doing that for a while. I'm buying brand new manufactured homes. I'm putting them on land. I've got a meeting tomorrow with a manufactured home builder, right, with the factory to order. I'll probably order 3 or 4 more homes. And I'm not really concerned, because my manufactured homes, and here's the thing, I feel like an evil man when I say this, I sell them for $400,000 for a manufactured home, right?
Are you doing manufactured or modular?
Well, they're built in a factory on wheels, and they roll them out on I-beams, and then they set a skirting around them.
Okay.
I find different people have different names for it across the country. It's not always.
That's not an
It's
like-
off-site,
Yeah,
it's a Clayton home.
yeah.
Okay.
See, a modular is built off-site and brought and sat down on the foundation,
Right.
not with the rails. If you got a rail system, then it's considered manufactured home, which are great, because the market is changing, especially down in South Carolina. They're starting to do, even on the golf courses, they're doing manufactured and modular homes now, and they're $460,000 homes.
Yep.
It's in-
Which is why I'm okay with them, because the houses, like I'm doing them in Prescott, Arizona, it's a really big retirement community, but you still have people going in there and the houses are 550 to 600,000. So I come in and I put a manufactured home for 400,000 and people think I'm the bee's knees, right? So as interest rates go up, guess what? My manufactured homes are only going to be more popular, right? They're going to be more in demand, because when you raise rates by 2%, 400,000 looks a lot better than 550. So I'm just like, keep them coming, because I'm the next step down. As they come down from the nicer homes and the custom homes, they keep coming down. Well, my manufactured homes, they're a step down, and so I can do that. Maybe I'll start getting into condos and things like that, but I'm kind of a wimp. I don't want to become a real builder. I'm just a plow the land and put a manufactured home on it builder. So I'm a fake, but it works. I make money at it, right? But the fact of the matter is that's what you'll see happen. You'll see people just shift, and they'll just shift to different places and positions in that scale. Eventually, if we don't do things to solve the labor and material pricing problem, then maybe even if interest. That being said, if the inflation is so bad, interest rates go up to 8, 9, or 10%, then it's true. You could freeze the housing market. You could create a massive national disaster. And I think everybody needs to be honest about that. I had one guy years ago get so mad at me because I mentioned that Social Security could go bankrupt, and he screamed at me and called me names, said, "You're an idiot. The politicians would never let that happen." And I said, "I love you, but the Romans died. Their civilization died. It left, right? So, and most civilizations don't last more than a few hundred years. So you pretend as if something can't take us down, you're wrong." Now, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we have a lot of other things going on, but the flat fact of the matter, if inflation gets to so bad that they raise interest rates to 8, 9, 10, 11%, yeah, you could freeze it all, because even the wealthy people might stop buying, right? It could get that bad. Is it going to get that bad? I hope not. I don't think so. But you have to be prepared for things that you don't see. But barring any major 8, 9, 10, 11, 12% immediately that would freeze the market for 2 or 3 years, again, you're just going to see your strong buyers just go down in what they buy. They'll be buying smaller homes, more affordable homes, more condos, more townhomes. You'll see luxury kind of taper off. You'll see the high middle income taper off a little bit as your buying pools get smaller. And then your affordable people, they're pretty much going to have to start migrating. They're going to start migrating to places where it's still somewhat affordable, and you see that. So I don't know if that helps, solve some of the question, but I think segmenting your buyers allows you to predict and make good business decisions.
Mhm.
That's well said. And I like that.
I think it's key.
Yeah, absolutely. Very smart.
Perfect. So again, I think, that's part of why I bought those duplexes where you guys are at is, as I looked around the market, I said, you have a big population, it's big enough where businesses can come in and pull from enough population that a larger business can come in. It's cheap enough still, even though your prices are up considerably from what they used to be compared to Nashville. Oh my gosh. Memphis is even cheaper, right? But Nashville is incredibly expensive. But Chattanooga seems to have the infrastructure, it seems to have the popularity, it seems to have a little bit more affordability. So even as interest rates go up, my thought is, well, great. Again, whoever made the astute observation that all I'm doing is bringing your guys' prices up to national averages, that's correct. And that's why I gave this presentation on a screen instead of being there in person. That way you can throw things at me, right? But that's what'll happen, and so you're gonna watch that area continue, I think, to develop and to grow and get better, I think. So it has a little bit of an insurance policy against the challenges that's facing the rest of the nation. And I think you'll get more talent in there. I think you'll get more. I was reading a report in your guys' area. People don't normally move there as much for the jobs as they do more for kind of the quiet space and, just to enjoy the atmosphere. But again, affordability, I think, will change that. I think you'll drive more businesses there for the affordability. And I think you might actually see, some growth, at least for the next couple of years, driven by the interest rates and the lack of affordability. So that's my thought. I could be wrong on that one, but I think there's some good, solid thinking behind it, right?
Well, one other thing with that is we have a really good high-speed internet system. And so what's also happened with COVID, we have a lot more people moving in here that used to be in New York because they had to be in New York, used to be in San Francisco because they had to be in San Francisco. They had to be in Dallas. but now they're working remotely for good. You know, their businesses have made that decision to do that. And they like more of an outdoor enthusiast market with a lot lower taxes and more affordability. I mean, their starter homes are 800 to $1 million. So to come in here and pay cash 400,000, they're saving a lot of money. And that's a real challenge for the local buyer. Our local buyer is dead in the water right now. Dead in the water.
See, and that's what this is probably outside of this, but that's where I think wages, until wages catch up, I don't know how that's ever gonna be resolved.
Our wages
Because
are
those
great.
people, they're making their California wages here.
No, that'll change a little bit.
I don't live in California, so I can't speak on California.
No, but that's the whole thing about, I mean, and I'm not a CPA or a tax person, but that is something that's really come up, is where their work is from, is the tax base they pay.
Yeah, I was wondering this.
So that's happening. So their work is from California, but they're working remotely in Chattanooga. They are not paying a Tennessee tax base.
Okay.
They're paying a California tax base.
It's interesting, isn't it?
So yes, so that's something that really happened last year with this whole COVID situation, that they really made some adjustments on.
They are
Part of
benefiting.
the answer, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, they are
Yeah,
gonna pay the
that's-
property taxes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I mean, we have people moving here from New York that are used to $20,000 to $30,000 in annual taxes for their homes.
We're
So
from
they,
Chicago,
yeah,
and yes,
Yeah,
it's
Chicago's the
really
same way.
bad. Our last house in Chicago was, we bought for like 300,000. We were paying $9,000 in property taxes. And I just had a really close family friend move here, and they sold their house for about $750,000, and they were paying $21,000 in property taxes.
that's commercial property fees.
Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, that's a commercial property tax here.
This is where everybody hates me, because when they come to California, I always say, look, you're coming here because it's a great state, so don't vote the way you did in California. There are people who want to throw rocks at me, right? I'm like, don't bring your high taxes over here to my state. Leave me alone, right? We're leave us in peace. So, but look, part of the challenge is, it's true that, the low wage, there's so much that plays into this, but you are going to see some challenges with local people. I mean, wages will come up, but the cities will take advantage of, the high wage income earners that come in will be awesome. But boy, I tell my kids constantly, I say, look, you have to pay attention to the world around you. And as investors, unfortunately, we can't undo the realities of the world. You can't undo gravity. It's not possible. You can't jump off a cliff and say, well, because it's not nice, I'm just going to pretend gravity doesn't exist and I'm not going to die now. No, you jumped off the cliff, the gravity's going to kill you. Right? It's not going to work. And so a lot of times, we make policies that, oh, well, that's not nice. Let's just make a policy to try to undo that. And what we end up doing is spending and wasting a ton of money, and we create a huge amount of problems. So, for those people who are looking for affordable jobs, I tell my kids, I'm like, look, you may not love computers, but if you want a 9-to-5 job where you wake up in the morning, you don't have to be a business owner, a doctor, or a surgeon, or one of those, whatever, computers are a place where you go get a job and you can literally come out of college with a living wage. So a lot of people don't realize that, but a lot of our technology provides living wages for people, but you have to get through that schooling and finish and be deliberate about it. But the problems are going to remain for us as investors. How do we solve the living wage? Well, we can't change schools. We can't change policy. We can't get education what it needs to do to switch the labor force around. So for us, we just have to innovate. How do we create houses that are cheaper? Well, keep your eyes on technology. Who's heard of Boxable? Anybody heard of that company, Boxable?
Yeah, they're great.
Yeah,
I have, they're great.
Horton,
Yeah.
Horton just invested in them myself.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they'll actually turn out anything that's true. I mean, all these new technologies, they'll say, hey, new technology affordable. And I'm like, oh, great. And I'll click on their button, 450,000 for like an 800 square foot home. I'm like, who in the hell said that was affordable, right? So I'm like, somebody in the marketing department is telling a lie. They've been in Washington too long. That's not true. But 3D printing, keep your eyes on technologies, because, technology might provide a solution where maybe we can get back to a $200,000 home. Maybe we can get back to something that's affordable again, but technology might be the answer to that. But innovate, we're in that industry. Watch those companies, see what they're doing, see how they're making it happen. There's another company out there I don't know of. I have looked into 3D printing companies, but there's another one that's it's a modular, but it's different, Charles, than the ones you and I were talking about. Like they're literally like talking about like with a crane, they build it and then they like stack it like a hotel. So you'd actually build it and then stack it like true boxes, not like you bring a trailer and then open it up. But I think we need to keep our eyes on technology and try to see how we can, how we can help with that, because you've got to get labor down, and technologists want to get labor down, right? That's something that we can do, is be innovative, right?
You think the supply chain is going to speed up soon or later? And I think that's the biggest part from what I'm looking at as far as pricing.
It
Being
is.
able to get materials to us, we order them. And, as soon as you sign a contract, there's certain things you need to order right then and there, because it's gonna take 4 months to get it. So by the time you get to that point of your construction phase, it'll turn into an on-time delivery. Instead of being able to just go pick it up in the next, 1 week to the next.
Yeah, the labor challenge is a little bit harder, but you're right. I agree with you that supply chain issues are a big deal. But again, that's something that's so hard for us to control, because like with the baby formula thing, from what I've understood, I don't know if this is true yet or not, but I at least heard rumor that it has to do with the fact that the regulatory agencies aren't inspecting fast enough. They're just taking their time because, well, our staff's out on COVID, so they're not getting to the plants to inspect. So by law, they can't put baby formula out. So it's kind of funny. Congress is trying to pass this federal law to fix the baby formula program, but it's the federal inspectors that are causing the problem, right? So it's like, how do you and I solve it? But it's true. It's true that the supply chain issue has got to be, I don't know a number on this, but it has to be, I would say probably 20% of our building costs. I mean, I'm just guesstimating on that, but it's not a small
Might be
percentage.
more.
It's a big one.
It might be closer to 25 or 30 right
Yeah.
now. It's a
Yeah,
real
so if you
issue.
solve that, if it gets solved out and it irons out, I mean, that would be a huge blessing. You watch, material costs come down 30%. I mean, that would just, we need that. That's something that we need to get back to some of that, again, reasonable affordability. Because you, like I say, you can't just print more money to pay for it, because then you exacerbate the inflation problem. And so we need those supply chains to get worked out. Well, I know China's been going on more, I think recently they have more isolation restrictions because of COVID. And then, whether or not our government's doing a good job at truly cutting out the red tape and being effective on both sides. I mean, that's it's a debate for a different room.
Well, what was fascinating was to see how much builders were actually buying from China. And I don't think they really realized
Didn't
it,
know it.
but like,
We knew not to buy
Lights.
sheetrock from China.
right, but lights,
Yeah.
almost all the lights in the United States come from China
Yeah.
now.
Right.
And so things like that when there were big problems with China, it was like, wow, I had a lot of builders saying, I had no idea that all my lights came from China,
Yeah.
but they come from China. Now I'm in a problem,
Yeah,
My dad has been having issues. He's doing their corporate remodel on their headquarters back in Brentwood. And he said it's like critical path. They need those lights right now. And they were supposed to get them. And the day before they were supposed to be delivered, they said, oh, it's going to be an additional 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And he's like, we need these now so we can move on to the next phase. And
Yeah.
they're like, dude,
Not gonna
good
happen.
luck.
Like, sorry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, it's like,
It's
and
like a $50
windows,
million renovation. I mean, this
windows
is
are
a
the
massive
same,
renovation.
windows are the same way
Yeah.
right now. The
Yeah, it's
windows are,
crazy.
See, the windows,
Well,
you can't,
that's,
but lights, we can put lights in just to get closing.
right,
Then they'll come in 3 weeks later, take them down and put them up.
yeah, but it's,
You can't do that with windows.
Saran wrap.
Yeah.
Where you can get those quicker than you can single one.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yes.
so that's.
and I
think
apologize if I missed something because of the microphone. If I've talked over somebody, forgive me there. My ability to hear what you're saying is really limited. But I would say that to end out, what it comes to then is, like we segmented out the buyers, you have to segment out your strategies too. So, I really care about that affordable problem, and I'd love to be a part of that solution and find a true open market, solution to that. And I'll keep thinking on that. But as far as our ability to make money, it's not going to go away. People aren't going to start living, in caves. There's got to be a solution for those of us who are creative. So segment your buyers and then segment your strategies too. We just talked about manufacturing. If you happen to live in a state and have a product that the federal government isn't going to put lots of red tape up, it might be a good time for somebody to say, hey, I'm just going to start manufacturing lights, right? And again, one of the reasons they go to China is it's so cheap there. But with technology, maybe somebody gets into manufacturing and they start manufacturing something. Maybe you do business in Mexico and start manufacturing there, whatever the case is. That's not necessarily a real estate strategy, but I'll bet you anything that subject to using land trust to buy subject to houses is about to become incredibly popular on the educational circuit, right? So I'm sure it's already been there. I know one company does a lot on it, but it's become a strategy that people are going to eat up and love unless the law stops it. But you can adjust to that. You can adjust to, leasing a property and then doing an Airbnb out of it, as opposed to having to buy it with the interest rates. New development where you change out and you go to the smaller houses. So tax liens. So it's a matter of, as the market shifts, shift the demographic you're serving and then shift the strategy you're working on. And no matter what happens, there'll always be money to be made. I mean, it's, as real estate investors, there's always housing that needs to be taken care of. And we come in and mop up a lot of inefficiencies. And so as long as you're segmenting your demographic, and as long as you're shifting your strategy to serve that demographic, there'll always be something to build. There'll always be something to flip. There'll always be something to rent. You'll just have to adjust your strategy accordingly.
Mhm. Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah.
Well,
And that's all I
yeah.
got, Eddie. That's all I got for today.
Do you, I know we focus more on like what's propping the market up, but just can you touch base on maybe go into a little bit more detail about maybe some things that could pull it in another direction? We talked about
So what's
inflation.
pulling it down?
Yeah. Or what could potentially pull it down? Like we talked a little bit about, if interest rates go up too much, like extremely high, it could have some buyers to pull, cause some buyers to pull back. And so affordability. But do you see anything else that could work negatively against the market?
So affordability exacerbated by interest rates is,
Yeah.
I would say that's the biggest issue.
Yeah.
The second one would be, population. But again, that's not a problem you have. That'd be like if you lived in the state of New York. And I mean, I see a lot of people, they'll go buy a rental in New York because it has good cash flow. And I'll say, remember, a lot of your wealth in rentals is appreciation. Like a lot of people think you buy rentals for cash flow. No, you buy rentals for cash flow when you're already a millionaire and you're ready to retire. That's when you buy rentals for cash flow. But you really buy rentals for appreciation. That's what you buy it for. That's what makes you rich. If you don't understand that, then you buy rentals for the wrong reason and you waste decades of your life. It's just you buy for appreciation. So, the buildings I bought in Chattanooga, they need some work. And pretty much all my cash flow is going to go in for a couple of years because they got to fix back up, right? But that's fine because I think the area is going to continue to get population is going to grow. So population is going to help it go up. But in another state, I could have bought duplexes in Ohio for, $160,000, so $100,000 less that would have cash flow nicely. But those parts of Ohio have population decrease, which is going to continue to get exacerbated. So yeah, this goes into, you really need to know your local market and you need to understand what's going on so that you can adjust appropriately. But for Tennessee, your whole state is blowing up. So that's not going to bring prices down where you guys are at. So the only other thing I can really think of that's going to hurt pricing is your guys' regulation. I wasn't joking. I know it's a political issue and I apologize for that, but I get really pissed off when people bring laws from other states that I feel have hurt their economies and that have caused problems in their states. And I know they mean well, but they bring them to my state. And if I suddenly get, $12,000 a month tax bills, I'm not going to be violent or anything, but I'm going to growl at them maybe and say, why we had such a good thing happening. But regulation. So what's your government doing? How are they making policies? How do they look at economics? And how do they deal with, Thomas Sowell talks about, he makes a good point. He says there's no such thing as solving a problem. They're just trade-offs, right? That's just it. Life has trade-offs. And when you understand that, you make good policies. And so the best thing that we can do as investors is try and make sure we're out there making sure that's true, letting people know we love people. Every time I have to raise rents, and I don't raise them as fast as I could, and I almost never take them up as high as they can go because I love people, and I feel it's as a landlord, I really mean this. I believe it's my obligation to give them a home to live in, and that they should feel respected. But it's interesting. I'll go to raise it. My wife's like, "Oh, you shouldn't do that. You're hurting them." And I'm like, "Honey, I got to fix the roof. You know, if I don't have the money to fix the roof because labor materials are higher, then they're not going to like me anyway because they're gonna have leaks. You know, I got to fix the plumbing." And so what we can do is hopefully go to our politicians and say, "Look, we know things are hard right now, but please don't make a policy that's going to get you votes that in the long run is going to create bigger problems. It's great that it keeps you in power now, but let's please recognize there are trade-offs here. And you know, if you do this because it gets you a short-term election trade-off, but economically down the road, it creates more poverty than we have. And there's a lot of research that shows that politicians think that way, creates an issue. And so I would say, you know, really make sure that as investors, we're staying out of the popular news, because the popular news is sensational. Make sure we're educating ourselves so that we keep that, you know, that love and mercy and kindness part of us, you know, in balance with the fact that gravity isn't kind or loving or merciful. You jump off the cliff, you're dead, right? And that's how economics works. And so, you know, if we educate ourselves well, then we can help the public be more educated, make sure our policymakers are more educated so they make good policy decisions. You know, I mentioned schools. I think there's a lot of problems. We have a lot of people who could be in better paying jobs. They exist. If you know Mike Rowe does a phenomenal job at pointing out that there are a lot of high paying trades jobs out there that aren't being filled because a lot of our kids won't go there. And so I tell my kids, look, I'm an investor. I've taught you to be business owners and investors, but if you don't want to be a business owner and investor, don't avoid the trades. And so there's a lot of things that kept kids out of the trade. So there's things like that we can do to make sure that, I mean, imagine if we were able to bring back kind of pride in the trades again. And so people were excited to be plumbers and electricians. Well, we might see, I mean, I have to pay $125 an hour for an electrician to touch anything. 100, if they're changing out outlets, that's what I got to pay out here. It's crazy. Well, that's not what it used to be. And so, you know, if we can do those kinds of things, but Eddie, the regulation part, the government part, the bringing labor down, that's not something we can control directly. And it's not something that we can control really in a short period of time. It's just kind of attitudes you have to watch over time. But overall, I think affordability and interest rates are our number one problem. Population can be a problem or a benefit. And for you guys, it's a benefit. And then lastly, it's just, you know, what are regulatory boards doing in terms of being wise or not wise to make sure that we have solutions to the labor material problems as well as the regulations. I've heard of stat California, their housing prices are high by about 50% based on regulation. Now, which of that regulation is needed and which isn't needed, again, that's a debate that I don't have enough information to say, but I would bet there's a good 10 to 60% of that regulation that probably isn't needed. And so that plays a big factor in it. We all have to be paying attention because there are a lot of forces that on all sides of any political debate, they're telling a lot of lies, a lot of them are. And so we have to be educated enough to help other people be merciful, but be wise at the same time, right? Wise as a serpent, what is it? Harmless as a dove, but wise as a serpent. It's one of those things, but policy is a big issue and it really affects us in a big way. So we gotta be smart about that.
So I'd like to bring up one other thought, and I don't know if you've kind of explored this or not. You know, you mentioned about the homeless problem becoming even more exasperated. And so a lot of communities are doing homeless communities and they're managing it as an investor pool and having care managers, and it's a great little tiny home community. And there's an investor pool that's put the money in, and they're actually getting funds from those state, local, or federal government to manage and handle that. Have you seen any investors working in that arena?
No, I think that's fascinating. I haven't seen that happening. It is an interesting perspective, you know, and it comes back to, I'm the kind of guy that if the law helps me, but I think it's bad in the long term, I'll vote against it, right? I think we have to vote long term, and so it just depends. And I haven't heard of it, but I would look at it and say, okay, are these investors who are making money because they've really created an affordable, market friendly approach where what's going on actually makes sense, or is the government paying exorbitant amounts and that are huge? Because if that's the case, then it's not solving the problem. It's not in the long run going to solve the issue. It's a Band-Aid issue. And so, I love it. I like it, but I haven't heard of anybody doing it. So I can't speak to whether or not I would like it or not like it. But sounds like a cool idea. Again, they just went smaller,
Oregon
so they
is
just put it
doing
in
it
Yeah,
tighter.
they're
LA.
not- And the government's not paying exorbitant amounts. What the government's doing is giving subsidies to help with the construction costs to drive it down.
Mhm.
Then once construction costs are driven down, then your local municipalities are giving these different people that are homeless vouchers. And along with the voucher comes a care manager that whether it's, you got a lot of people now that have mental illness and they're going in and out of jail. It's the mental illness that's putting them in jail. So now they have a caseworker that can manage that. And the government's doing a voucher that's covering where they live and getting subsidy monies. Then there's a win-win. The veterans aren't making a lot of money
Right, well,
off of it.
no, but it's a healthy environment and you're
it's very
creating
healthy,
a
yeah.
resolution of a big problem in a community.
Well, you have to segment that population, right? Because they're again segmenting, because you have the people who are homeless because they have mental illnesses, and that's a different solution completely. The ones I talked about earlier, where homelessness is going up, we actually have a whole, people who are drug addicted and mental illness, that's a whole different discussion. And that's never going to be profitable for anybody. It can't be, right? Because they're not living productive lives. And I'm not blaming them, right? I'm not, no judgment on my part. They just aren't living productive lives. And so that's always going to be a cost that as a society, we should pick up. We love people, we try to help them. I think some policies help them more than others, but again, another debate for another time. But the segment I'm talking about is the people who aren't mentally ill and they don't have drug problems, but affordability has become an issue. And so in that regard, we have really healthy, really productive, really amazing citizens that are struggling with affordability. And, if we're subsidizing that, I think is a good maybe short-term solution. But unless you solve labor and material costs to bring back affordability, in the long run, it'll get worse. It'll get worse. Countries do go bankrupt. It does happen. So I don't know. So if we segment out and say it's the healthy, hardworking group that just affordability's gone, I don't know. But yeah, the mental health and the drug ones that you got to take care of. Yeah, that's totally different discussions. But
No,
again,
this is the group that you're talking about. They've had bad luck. They have a good job. They have a job, maybe it's a manufacturing job. They're making $15 to $17 an hour, but they're homeless because of affordability. And this group of people, they're creating tiny home communities for like 400 to 600 square feet. And we've personally built 400 to 600 square feet with the support of the Mennonites for under $40,000.
wow.
It can be done.
I like that. I love it. It's innovative, right? You're both going smaller to save costs. And if you streamline it with systems, I love it. I think it's really cool. I hope it's working.
Providing shelter is affordable, is warm,
Mhm.
you can cool it.
And if you're
It's all your
creating,
needs.
a community for them.
Yeah.
The key is to find the land that will allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's the difficult part. Downtown Chattanooga, where all those
That's
people
not gonna
hang out, you're gonna
happen.
pay like $3 million for the quarter.
But you
acre.
can probably do it in Dade County. You can
Yeah,
probably do it
there's
in
a lot of
Marion
Ray,
County.
Dunlap, Ray,
There's a lot of
Bradley,
areas that you can do it.
where there are manufacturing plants that are moving in. to
Correct.
support the ones that live.
Yeah.
Correct.
In the old time, their names were trailer parks.
Yep.
Yeah.
I would love to see trailer parks come back, like the single wide trailer parks. I'd love to see a system, and I've debated trying one, but where you have like a really good HOA that really manages the people who are there. They can manufacture single wides fairly inexpensively, but I'd love to see, kind of maybe a little compact type. You have some green space in there, and you go to a city and say, look, I know you don't like trailer parks. A lot of times you bring a lot of crime and stuff, but we're gonna create a new system of HOA management. And again, bring some of these really phenomenal, people, manufacturing jobs and stuff, and say, it's not the Taj Mahal, but if you buy it and you live there for 5-10 years because of the HOA and maybe mandatory painting or things like that, so it stays in good shape, they can pay that off, then they can sell it and have their down payment to the next step up. But I would love to see trailer parks tried again. I haven't seen it, but I'd love to see somebody pioneer that and make it work.
It's all about how it looks.
Yeah. And
What's
get the
that?
hard-
It's all about how it looks.
Yeah.
And we've really appreciated you today.
Yeah.
Everybody learned something?
Oh,
Yeah,
Yes.
thank you very much.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you.
Yeah, yay. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Well, thanks for having me. You obviously look like a fun group. I wish I was out there hang with you more. But thanks for having me. I've really had a good time.
So when are you gonna come to Chattanooga?
Oh, I really want to come real bad. Actually, I was looking at some more pictures and outdoor stuff. I have a bunch of family reunions and my son's graduating this summer. So I don't know if I'll make it, but I may just take my wife and go out there with her. We might go do a little vacation out there, but I'd love to get out there this summer. Really. It looks like just a phenomenal place.
Well, you can always stay at our farmcation.
I could always
At
stay
our
where?
Our farm, Grace's farm.
We have a tiny home farmcation that you could stay at.
That'd be
Great.
awesome. I'll be calling you. It sounds like a blast.
Yeah.
Of course,
Oh,
of course, you know, I'm out west, so I'm kind of cowboyish. So, you know,
We're cowboys.
Yeah.
I'm just a pig farmer.
have a cow for me to milk. I'll be happy. Hey, you guys, be blessed. Thank you for letting me be a part of you. I really enjoyed it.
Talk to you later.
I thought that was good.
That was excellent, really was.
He's a good